The mid-season update brings us the Lachmann Shroud, which initially was kind of written off because it was semi-auto and only burst. But we're coming to find out that it has a very broken TTK. I'm gonna break down how that part works and what the practical TTK actually is. Pretty straightforward to do this. You kind of click on this region, it'll tell you what challenges you need to do, and they're listed for each of these, and you unlock all the weapons, and then you have a final challenge. I ended up doing the challenges live on stream, and I have the individual things here where we're unlocking the Lachmann Shroud. It took about 42 minutes from beginning to end with multiplayer. Obviously, without it'd be a little more challenging. I max leveled it in about 10-ish, 11 minutes, as you can see there. And we also max leveled the pistol in under 30 minutes. And that was from level 1 to level 21. That's just a side note. They do have a high velocity rounds for 9mm, which we haven't had in the game so far. A little side note there. So the main thing I want to take a look at here is the Lachmann Shroud. It already starts in burst fire. If we go ahead and over here and we can drop this down to battle royale, we can kind of look at the overall damage profile, rate of fire, and then we get into the TTK, we can kind of see a practical TTK of 524. This is going to be pretty important for the close range and kind of where that sits. But we also wanted to go ahead and kind of look at this other thing, which is the alt fire. And this is where the big craziness comes in. We go to alt fire, that's going to kick it over to semi-automatic. And then it has a 638 RPM. We'll talk about how non-realistic that number necessarily is. But when we go down here, we can go ahead and get some stupid fast TTKs. We get 470, which is just crazy ridiculous. And if you get one headshot in the mix or something along those lines, it drops it even lower. Before you get too excited, I want to go ahead and kind of show you what a realistic TTK is by how fast you can click on a mouse. Everyone's going to have a different click rate. You can obviously do click per second and increase the time. Obviously, the longer the time, it's going to be hard to maintain. It's like sprinting versus an endurance thing. You can get a certain number of clicks in. So if I'm on mouse, which I'm not necessarily the fastest clicker on keyboard and mouse, I can actually click a little bit faster on controller, but this just gives you an idea of kind of what your click rate would be. So I come through here, I get 8 clicks. I have usually sit around 8 to 9 clicks. So a lot of times sustained, I can get 8 very consistently. And if I wanted to, sometimes I can get 9, but that's kind of my physical limitation. Maybe if I worked at it, that is a realistic how fast I can click. And initially you're like, what the hell is the point of this, JGOD? Why does this matter? And it matters because you go ahead and take a calculator. Right now we just did 1 second how fast we can click. And generally you're going to kill someone if it's only 400 milliseconds, pretty accurate. Maybe your sustained fire, maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds tops. It will degrade over time, like I said. But if we take my 8 and times that by 60 seconds, we get a rate of fire of around 480. If we go ahead and take my 9, which is a little bit fast, maybe some people is a little bit faster. We can do 9 times 60, and we end up with 540. Obviously, that's just clicking. That's not even worrying about aiming, and that's if all your energy's on that. So odds are, if you're reaching that maximum potential, you're probably going to be missing shots as well. So it's something to consider. But either way, there is zero chance and in zero reality where I hit 640 RPM here. So if we go ahead and take 638 divided by 60, it means that you're going to be hitting about 10.5 times a second, which I know some people can do 11 or 12, but how consistent is that, and what part of the bell curve are you on, and how common that is? So long story short, you got to kind of factor that in. Feel free to do the click speed per second, kind of get your general estimate, and then you know how close you are to this broken theoretical TTK. So what I've done is I've updated the spreadsheet to go ahead and include these. So we have the close range, which is updated as of today because sim.gg went ahead and updated it. And we also have the long range, which is linked in the description. If you want it, bookmark it. It updates when I update it. So since it got updated today, we're good. A lot of different weapon changes here. If you look at the Lachmann Shroud and Semi, you can see it's pretty broken. You get a headshot in the mix, it goes even more stupid broken, as we can see as it goes across the board. But if you go ahead and reduce it down to that 480 RPM, which I'm probably going to be realistically in a gunfight, maybe 460, 480. And that's so it's a solid number. TTK isn't stupid broken, still pretty good at 625. Keeping in mind where you're at, one headshot will bump that down to the 500. So we end up in a really good spot where this TTK can be stupid fast. I don't know if they'll nerf it. maybe that opens the door for people to use macros or some kind of other nonsense to be a loser, but that's a whole other side story, right? Like that doesn't have to be you. You can just kind of see how it is. And then the burst mode, we can see here, it's still pretty consistent, but this assumes that you're hitting 7 shots in a row. Since it is a burst weapon, there is a little bit of how the pacing works on the rate of fire. So overall, pretty solid gun. Could definitely be meta, but it's going to be heavily reliant on how fast your trigger finger is. So to basically mirror my Lachmann sub setups, all pretty much almost identically, just because it is a very similar weapon. You can go ahead and go with the hollow point rounds or something like that, and you can kind of build it like that. I think I usually use a rear grip, and this is kind of a normal build, especially this FT mobile stock. I'm not sure if it got buffed on this end as well. And then pretty much you tune them all for sprint to fire, aim down sight, for pretty much all of them. Aim walking, aim down sight, bullet velocity, and damage range. Because it only has a 9-meter range, you kind of want to avoid that. You want a faster sprint to fire, faster aim down sight, and there you go. You kind of have a gun that is pretty solid. This is the burst fire. It almost feels like there's not much of a delay. Obviously there is a delay because there just has to be, but you're able to hit that trigger cap that the burst provides because of how fast the rate of fire is. If we swapped it to semi-auto, basically you can fire as fast as you can. You're probably not going to hit the trigger cap. And you have way more control over this weapon, that you can kind of like tap fire it at range, where you would more than likely hit a target where otherwise you probably wouldn't have. So go ahead and try it for yourself. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.